And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Beth Granger. Beth is a consultant that focuses on accelerating your social prospecting and social media learning. She's a social media guru. She's a trainer. She's a speaker. And she's, as of late, been doing some cool stuff on LinkedIn Live. So welcome aboard, Beth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. So let's just sort of dive in here. So as an author, as a speaker, as a thought leader, what are the things I should be thinking about as it relates to social and increasing my brand awareness and getting my message out in front of the right people?
Well, I think the biggest question I get is, do I have to be everywhere? Where do I have to be on social media? Because there's so many platforms, right? And
Sure.
new platforms coming out every minute. And what I recommend is be where your prospects are. So if your prospects are not on Pinterest, for instance, you don't need to be on Pinterest unless you're trying to be the first person in your area, if it's not a common place to hang out for the people you're trying to reach.
So, but let's go backwards on that, because that makes an assumption, and it's the right assumption, that you have clarity around the avatars of the client types that you're looking for. So step one is you got to get that right.
Yes, good point. Yes.
Right. So once you get a sense of who you're trying to serve, then you've got to do your homework and say, where are they? And like you said, yeah, if you're an interior decorator or whatever the case may be, Pinterest might be for you, right?
Right.
For a lot of thought leaders, just because Pinterest exists and it's a hot platform, if your people aren't there looking for what you got, you don't need to be there.
Exactly. And then in terms of when you said if somebody might not have clarity, they can do that research by going to the different platforms and seeing what the conversations are like and who's engaging there.
Got it. And people here's what I've seen. I don't know if you've seen similar things. Various authors and thought leaders and speakers pick a lane. They're like, oh, cool. I was at a conference and a friend of mine talked about whatever, LinkedIn Live or Facebook Live or Twitter. And then, I'm going to go all in type A and be a Twitter expert for like 3 weeks. And then the ADD kicks in and then I stop doing it. And then I go to the net. Like, am I the only one that has seen that?
I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, absolutely.
So tell us, that's a good idea, right? That's a good thing to do, or what would you say?
It's certainly worth experimenting and seeing what feels right for you too. Some of it's what you're comfortable with, and the combination of are the people there. And you might have different audiences or different groups of people that you engage with in different platforms, right? So
Sure.
whereas you might engage with journalists, for instance, on Twitter, your actual clients might be on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever.
Got it. I mean, where I was going with that, it was more the inconsistency of, go all in on one platform and then stop and go to the next one and then stop and then go like this sort of, whiplash effect.
Yes. I admit I've done that. I mean, there are sort of times and places too. When I first started using Twitter, I fell in love. Actually, when I first started using Twitter, I thought it was really silly and a waste of time. And then I fell in love with it.
Yep.
But I use it less now because my purpose or what I was trying to do changed. So I'm still there at times, but it's not the same. So there was definitely a period of time, and it was kind of like a year or 2 years actually, where I spent a lot of time there. More of my time is spent on LinkedIn now.
Got it. So that's interesting in that, what held true, a couple of years ago for you, things change, things evolve, your business moves, whatever. You have to reevaluate where you're getting your message out if things are changing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And how do you sort of deal with the difference between here's who I am, here's what my content's about, and then it's almost like a bit of a translation activity to get it out there effectively in different mediums, right? Because if, some things favor, Twitter, when it was restricted to 140 characters, it was a challenge for folks, right? To be pithy and to be, short form, and others, prefer video. And, how do you help folks get the right mix for them?
Well, it is a mix. I think that's a good point, because the platforms have algorithms, whether or not they tell you what they are, where they decide how many people are going to see your content. So, for instance, on LinkedIn, my favorite, as you know, a lot of people like to share articles that they read somewhere and make a comment about it. That's the least likely kind of content to be shown to your connections because it takes you off the platform and LinkedIn wants you to stay on the platform. That's my assumption anyway. They don't tell you.
Well, so let's go there for a minute. So it's easy for me, right? So I love that example. So I'm reading an article, it's interesting, whatever. I'm going to go post it to this group of people that'll find it relevant. It's a fairly easy thing for me to do. Click, paste, go. But like you said, you got to think about it. Well, what does LinkedIn want? They want you to live in the walls, right? They want you to stay on LinkedIn. And if you're putting up an article to go, hey, go check this out on Forbes, that's probably going to be, diluted by their algorithm.
Correct.
Right.
But I still do it. It's the idea of
Sure.
doing a mix, because if I read something and I want to share it, I share it. But I don't expect that that's going to get as many views as, say, something that I write or a PDF that I share or a video that I share.
So you tend to sort of gravitate or have deeper expertise around LinkedIn. So I want to spend some time there if we could.
Sure.
So here's what I've seen changing. It used to be fairly effective to do, sort of targeted connection email, sort of the in-mail campaigns to make connections and such. How has that changed, right, in terms of effective use of LinkedIn for new client acquisition?
Well, I think of LinkedIn as the online version of in-person networking. So the way I behave and engage is the way I would behave or engage in person. And not everybody treats it that way. Some people treat it more like an advertising tool or whatever it might be. So there's just so much noise, right? You see probably all the connection requests you get from people that you don't know with no message, and you're not likely to connect with them. And if you do, how often is the next thing that you get an in-mail with a sales pitch or request to have a phone call?
Right. Well, and I think the most aggravating piece is if the in-mail to get the sales pitch is so boilerplate and so not relevant to what you do. I mean, I get pitched for like outsourcing call centers to Singapore. It's like, okay, that has nothing, like, that's not even close. Like, why are you wasting my time or yours? I want to go back to what you said in terms of using the same sort of norms as you would at a networking event. So you wouldn't walk into a networking event the first time and get in the middle of the room and scream, look at me, buy me, right? And oftentimes that's what people are doing on LinkedIn. And not only are you not going to get the outcomes you look at, but people look at that and go, wow, what a jerk.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like that was obnoxious. That was just like, ugh, it's gross. So how do you sort of cross over and do that on LinkedIn in terms of sharing thoughts and being generous and letting people know what you do in a sort of salesy, not salesy way?
Sure. So I'll share what I'm up to. For instance, I'm going to be speaking at XYZ event, or I'll share answers to questions that I get. So, I was working with a client and they asked me, and here's the answer, right? So
that's interesting, because that shows, it gives someone the value of, hey, maybe they have the same issue that client had, but it also showcases your expertise and knowledge in solving that issue.
Exactly. And there's something actually today we're recording on a Friday. Today being Friday, there's a new tradition on LinkedIn. So I don't know if you've heard of Follow Friday on Twitter.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So somebody I know brought that over and started doing it on LinkedIn, and I really liked it. So it's been spreading, and people have been suggesting people for you to follow from their network that they like or respect or think you should know. And I think that's a great way to use it like a networking tool, right? You're making an introduction essentially.
Right. So you've basically said, hey, I've sort of vetted, or I find this person intriguing or interesting or whatever, and you might as well.
Exactly.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. Interesting. Okay. You're doing some really cool stuff on LinkedIn Live, and we haven't taken the dive into that on our end yet, but tell me what you've learned, what's working, where that works well, some of the norms around it.
Sure. Well, first of all, I am loving it. I did not know or realize how much I would. So I don't know if it's technically in beta, but you have to apply, and they're rolling it out slowly and deliberately, which I think is a good idea. The people are experimenting with it, which is great. So some people are using it like an online visual podcast. Some people are using it almost like a little TV show.
Okay.
Some people are, I'm using it as in a similar way that you do your podcast, where I have conversations with people.
Okay.
And it's really experimental right now.
So the live piece is interesting because we're so used to social media being there. It'll be there whenever I want. I'm standing online at Starbucks, take out my phone, and I get 10 minutes between a conference call, zip around. But the live piece sort of moves you towards saying, at 1 o'clock or whatever the time is, Beth's doing something, and I'm going to carve out that time in my day because it's interesting enough for me to do that.
Exactly. So I think what I've noticed, there are people that will always be on no matter what time I'm doing it. They just, they find it interesting. And then there are other people, it's sort of serendipity. They happen to be at their computer or on their phone and they get a notification that I'm there. And so they join. And then some people, it's because of the guest I'm having. Maybe they want to hear from that person. So it's kind of a mix of different people coming in for different reasons.
And how tight do you stay on a theme or a focus area?
I have been staying consistent on the weekly ones. I think I'm going to experiment with some sort of pop-up lives that I may not promote ahead the way I promote the regular ones, just to explore, a different format and different content.
Got it. So what's a pop-up live? You just randomly say hit record and bang, here I am?
Going, because my weekly ones I promote ahead of time the week before. I put it out there all over the place. This is who I'm having, what time, that kind of thing. And some people have picked a specific day and time so that you can count on it and have it right in their bio, like Tuesday, 8 p.m. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So they're going to cross promote.
No. Meaning other people that do LinkedIn Live have picked. I've been playing with the time and the date. Some people have already made it more like a show, right? My show is Tuesdays at 8 p.m. kind of thing.
Got it. And I guess, and what have you seen as benefit, outcome, et cetera, from that? Like what's some of the benefits that you've seen
doing it
as a result of doing it?
So reputation-wise, it's been great, right? People see me frequently. People say they enjoy it. They comment, they engage. Other people discover me that haven't. And just the conversations themselves actually are really interesting. And I learn so much from each person that I have on.
Got it. Great stuff. So I know you also speak and are involved the NSA and speaking and all that. Tell us about the sort of evolution of your speaking career.
So it's funny. So I think I'm shy, actually. I don't know. Maybe I'm not.
Okay.
But I consciously, a number of years ago, I don't even know when it started, I consciously made the decision that I wanted to, and I don't know if it exactly the thinking, but there was a conscious choice that I wanted to do some speaking. And I just put it out there saying, hey, can I speak at your event? Or people would invite me to speak at their event. And then I started doing teaching, which in my head was different than speaking, but it really isn't, right? So that was a head game I was playing with myself. And I just kept getting invited to speak places and fell in love with it. Yeah.
Cool. So interesting that a shy person would wake up one day and say, "I think I should speak more in public," because that would typically be most shy person's
Maybe
biggest nightmare in the world is right. or it's interesting is that many of my clients are speakers. Obviously, many of them are actually introverted. You get them off the stage, and there's a bit of social awkwardness. There's a bit of you'd think they'd be the most charismatic, outgoing sort of life of the party, but it's in that setting where that works for them, right? But outside of that, not so much. They don't want to do the cocktail party thing. They don't want to do the mixer. They, it's like, boom, lights, camera, action, go. Line me up. I'll do my thing, and it's just. And
I think you're right. I think a lot of people that are professional speakers are introverts, and it's an interesting thing. I guess they just sort of come alive when they're on the stage or speaking in front of people.
Well, my hypothesis, which has no scientific underpinnings, is that many speakers start as writers, and more writers than not are more introverted, right? And introspective and work alone and that sort of thing. And then the speech is like people read the writing and say, wow, you should speak about that, right? And that's sort of the next piece. So it wasn't like speaking was the first line of attack, but again, a non-validated
I like
hypothesis.
It. Could be.
Okay. So now it's validated. I have a second opinion. There we go.
We can do a study.
It's all right. We just studied it. Exactly. So on the speaking side, how do you make decisions around where to speak and how to speak? Because there's speaking for a fee, which if someone meets your fee and it's in that range there and whatnot, that's obvious. But on the non-paid speaking stuff, when you're starting out, how do you have the discipline to make the decisions to say, this is an event that's worth my time, my energy, my effort, this one not?
Well, I think that's a great question, because I know at one point I was thinking about, maybe I'm doing too much free and I should do more paid. And I spoke to an amazing woman from NSA named Tammy Evans, and she's just brilliant and funny. And she said, if your role is 100% speaking, you have to get paid because that's what you do to bring in your income. If you have a business, you can choose to speak for free, but you have to get something for it. So maybe it's that you're getting in front of an audience you want to be in front of. Maybe if it's earlier in your career, it's just you're getting practice doing it. Maybe you can promote an offering or your book, or so that you're getting something from it that isn't necessarily specifically monetary. So that's how I decide. And of course, if I have causes that I care about, I'll do stuff for them for free, or places where my prospects hang out, if it makes sense for me to do so.
Awesome. Okay. As we start to wind up, or wind down, I should say, any final thoughts, reflections, advice?
Well, one thing I will say is that some people are nervous about doing video, whether recorded or live, and I think they should get over it.
So get over it. That's it. Snap out of it.
So powerful right now on all the social media platforms, and it enables you to make a stronger connection with somebody when they see you, when they hear you, right? I mean, similar with your podcast, right? If somebody hears your voice, they feel like they know you better than when they just read something or see something you share.
Got it. So the more of yourself you can get out there, good, the bad, the ugly, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. Just
absolutely.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I love it. Cool. Well, this has been awesome. I want to thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Chatting. Thank you.
Lots of stuff that I learned. I know I was scribbling down some notes here, so that's always cool. And I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.